Good evening. Hello. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you very much for showing up. This is a very special evening, and I have the honor to be the MC for this opportunity, which just means that I try to keep anybody from talking too long, including myself. But I first want to honor a few of distinguished. Well, now where did Troy Price go? At any rate, we do have special folks here, including Troy Price, who is the chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party. And then, of course, our elected officials that have been stalwarts, including Sheriff Paul and Beth, and I think Lisa will be here soon as well. There you are! And then of course, Herman is going to be here. And yay! And so, very briefly, the agenda is that I'm going to give a few remarks, but the main thing is we have some honored speakers that will talk about our honorees for the evening. And then, fortunately, our leaders, Herman and Beth and Lisa, will give a look back and a look forward. And then I will honor everybody here and thank you for helping to make this go. I should really honor Marcia Thompson, who's really been pushing it. So, in conversing about this, Marcia was kind enough to let me morph this party into something that I think is very important for us to think about for a moment. I think this is a little bit about the Democratic Party, and I think the Democratic Party is very, very important. I'll be blunt with you. There's nobody in this room that doesn't have an ache in your heart about what's happening in this country right now. This is bad times. You see the specter, you see the possibility of a fascist, a dictatorship taking forward, co-opting the media, co-opting the courts. It is no good. And there is one sanctuary for us, which is the Democratic Party, period. I have a whole page that I was going to ramble on, but I promise to keep things short. So, just remember, you think it can't happen here, it can happen here. Democracy is fragile, and it's you and I and us staying together that will make it, keep it that way, keep us a democracy, okay? And John was brilliant in talking about the bylaws or whatever, the mission statement of the Story County Democratic Party. That's it, folks. Every man, every person, everyone is valued in this society, and we all have to stand up and make it happen, okay? All right, so I do have the honor as the MC to say my couple thank yous for the honorees. And please understand, we want to honor our future as much as the past, but I'm going to talk about the old folks first. So, I'm going to talk about you first, John. This is very short. This is very short. But I'll tell you, one of the most enjoyable days of my life here recently was spending that day, Saturday, going up and getting signature for John Passion. And we were on the road. It was a lousy day, bad weather, heading up to Humboldt, Pocahontas, Algona to get signatures. We solved all the problems of the world. Yeah, we got that all done. But then this guy, I don't care whether you're talking about a laundromat in Pocahontas or a hardware store in Humboldt or a Hy-Vee in Algona. This guy, his name should be Klaus. He's like this Irish bravado that I don't care who you are, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to, bring you on board. And it was wonderful, John, and I thank you. I thank you. I want to say, yeah, that's fine. Now I want to say a few things about Tom Beell. We kind of say all this, cheeky, cynical, cutesy stuff about the notes for the Democratic Party. I mean, that's not a great job, taking the notes for the Central Committee. Tom, I want you to remember one night when we used to meet as a Central Committee at the top of YSS. You started to say some things. You asked some questions. You're a frickin' poet. There is a lyrical to you about that and a passion for the Democratic Party that is inside of you, and I thank you for that very much. I should have said, I mentioned to the table, when I had the opportunity to do this, I thought I would do a riff on Wizard of Oz, you know, with Dorothy and the Three Tin Men, but I couldn't figure out who Toto was, so I gave up on that whole thing. So, Tom, your turn. Tom is a little bit newer in my experience, but my first interaction with him was drinking liberally. And here's this guy with a little book about Thomas Aquinas, and then giving these very insightful comments. I said, whoa, watch out for this guy. He goes on to sitting through entire Story County supervisor meetings. Who would do that? Anyway. And then, you know, giving these very, very insightful, thoughtful insights. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And Jan, you're up. You're not Dorothy, I know. But the whole thing it's really tough. It's really tough. I couldn't come up with a catchy, simple thing for you. Partly because I got to thank your whole family. I got to thank Lee, Marley, I got to thank Kurt and Melinda. But you're a force. And, you know, all the things that you do inspire others. You have committed your life day and night, time after time, to support the Democratic Party. And God knows we need the Democratic Party now. I already said what I said, okay? And I thank you. You inspire us. All right. So we have the privilege of having the chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party here, Troy Price, and busy guy. Thank you so much for coming up, Troy. We'd like you to talk for us a little bit.
Well, good evening, Story County Democrats, and thank you, Doctor, for the introduction, and thank you all so much for giving me the opportunity to come up here tonight and say a few words about this outstanding team that you folks have had here in Story County for all these years. So on behalf of a grateful party, I just want to say thank you to Jan and John, Tom, and Thomas. I want to thank all of you for the work that you've done. You know, for years, in good cycles and bad, we have always been able to count on the Story County Democrats. No matter who's sitting in my chair, you can always count on the Story County Democrats. You folks have worked hard, you folks have worked tirelessly, and we have been successful up here in good cycles and bad because of the leadership that you folks have shown. And I know it hasn't been easy. Anyone who has served as county chair or in county party leadership knows it is a very thankless job. It is a very hard job. And so I know you folks have sacrificed time away from your jobs, time away from your family, time away from your friends to fight for a cause that's bigger than you, to fight for a cause that's bigger than just our party. And so on behalf of the party, I want to say thank you to all of you for the great work that you folks have done. And I know while you may be stepping down from these positions and moving into the emeritus role, I want to say thank you so much for everything that you folks have done. And we literally could not have done all that we have done as a party without your work. So thank you. But Marcia, when she reached out to me, she asked me to say a few words about Jan. I know you're going to be hearing a lot of folks coming up tonight who will be able to talk about Jan's leadership here in the county and this great executive team's leadership here in the county. But I wanted to take a few moments to talk a little bit about what Jan has done outside of Story County. You know, I was trying to think about what I was going to say when I was driving up here today. And when I first got involved in politics, and this was in early 2000s, Jan Bauer was already a legend in her own right. People were talking about her. People, you know. So when I first got to actually work with Jan, which was in the 2012 re-elect with for Barack Obama, I'm like, oh my God, Jan Bauer, like, you know, she's going to run circles around me. She's going to be upset with me about something because she's Jan Bauer. She knows everything. And she does know everything, let me be clear. But I will say this, that so many people like me, so many young organizers across this state and across this country have benefited because of Jan. She has always been welcoming, always been willing to open up the office, open up her home, never afraid to take a phone call, never afraid to offer guidance and help, and always does it in a quiet way. And so, as a younger, not as young as I used to be, but as someone who, as a younger person in this game, Jan Bauer will always be remembered as someone who has created a whole new generation of leadership for the Democratic Party and for progressive politics in this state. And, but I did want to take a few minutes just to make sure, because a lot of folks don't really know what, Jan gets celebrated a lot for the work that she does here in Story County. But her work goes far beyond just the borders of this county. Back in 2009, she was appointed to be an at-large representative on the DNC. Now, that just sounds, like, okay, it's just a job, right? This is actually a very special job. Only 75 people in the entire country get to be selected for those positions. Those positions are filled with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandson is one of them. Labor leaders, international presidents are one of them. And Jan Bauer is one of them. And as such, she's a member of our State Central Committee. And so that guidance that she provides, that service that she provides, that friendship and mentorship that she provides, she does on our State Central Committee. Anyone who's been on our Central Committee over the last decade can attest to the fact that Jan Bauer has always been there to help guide. And I'll say this, for people in my position, Jan Bauer has always been there to be a guidance, to bounce ideas off of, to talk through things. And I know I'm speaking not just for myself, but for everyone who's served in this role over the last 12 to 14 years, that Jan Bauer has always been there to help guide us and help make sure that we are doing what we need to do. But her work on the DNC, there's a lot I can talk about that. And there's a lot of stories I probably shouldn't share of nights at the bar at the DNC meetings. But the one thing I want to just point to is this. We're undergoing a lot of changes right now in our caucuses, and our whole party is undergoing a lot of changes. It's not just caucuses, but the primaries, our party governments, everything is being changed right now. And Jan Bauer was one of the 21 people who made that happen. She was a member of the Unity Reform Commission. And that was, it was a huge honor for anyone to be appointed to that committee. But the chair of the DNC, Tom Corrieri, only got 3 appointments to make to that committee. The Sanders people appointed some, the Clinton campaign appointed some. But the chair of the party only got 3 appointments to make. Jan was one of them. It points to and attests to the fact that Jan Bauer's leadership is well known, not just in Iowa, but across this country. And because of her, because of her leadership and because of her work, she is fundamentally changing our party, fundamentally changing how we conduct our elections, fundamentally changing what our party stands for and how we bring people into it and how we welcome people into it. That is because of Jan Bauer. And that is because that is who Jan Bauer has always been. And so, I'm a crier. Sorry, I'm a little bit like John Boehner. I tend to tear up quite a bit. But it's the only thing I have in common with him, by the way. But so on behalf of myself and on behalf of the Democratic Party, I want to say thank you, Jan, for everything that you've done. And while I know, and I will still call you Chair Emeritus, but while you are moving into this role and while the rest of the Executive Committee is moving into this role, I want you to know just how while you may not be in this role anymore, I know that you are going to continue to do tremendous things for our party. And to Maddie and everyone else who's the new executive team here in Story County, I just want to say thank you for stepping up. Thank you for the work that you are going to do, and we are all looking forward to working with you and everyone in this room to make sure that in 2020 Iowa truly goes blue. But to make sure we defeat Donald Trump, defeat Joni Ernst, elect Democrats back into control of the legislature, and and I know we're going to do it, and I know we're going to do it because this is one of the strongest county parties, not only in the state but in the country. And so thank you to everyone to Jan and the rest of the executive committee that's moving into the emeritus role. And thank you to everyone for stepping up, and thank you to all of you, because we've got a lot of work to do, but I know we're going to do it because of all the great activists in this room and beyond. So thank you all so much.
I'm going to take advantage of having Troy here. We have some awards, and I'd like you to give them to the recipients, if you would. And
Sure.
Thank you, Troy, very much for coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got Democratic Leadership Awards to hand out, and so the first one goes to Chair Emeritus Jan Bauer. Oh, sure. I'm sorry about that. And it says, so this next one will be for John Klaus, and this is Democratic Leadership Award presented by the Story County Democrats and the Iowa Democratic Party on this 9th day of March 2019 to our County Vice Chair, John R. Klaus, in recognition of his many years of dedicated service to the Democratic Party. With respect and gratitude for the inspiration he has given us and for exemplifying those virtues we esteem most highly: justice, honesty, wisdom, courage, loyalty, and compassion. John, come on up. Thank you, sir. And next up, to the County Treasurer Emeritus, our next Democratic Leadership Award, and it says the same thing as what I just read, is going to go to Thomas Corrieri. And last but certainly not least, the Democratic Leadership Award from the Story County Democrats and the IDP is going to go to the County Secretary Emeritus, Thomas Beell. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Troy. Let's give him a round of applause. And Troy, best of health. Hang in there, buddy. Help us out, okay? All right. So now, the format going forward is that we have 4 selected people to talk about each of the recipients. And we're going to start with Jane Halliburton. I'll keep it a secret as to who she's talking about. Well, anyway, you'll figure it out. There you go, Jane. Thank you.
I don't think it will take long for you to figure this out. But I was absolutely thrilled when Marcia asked if I would be willing to say a few words about Professor Emeritus Thomas L. Beell. Just keeping with the flow. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to refer to him as Tom. And one of the reasons I was so thrilled to be asked to do this is because Tom is literally a neighbor of ours on Roosevelt Avenue and has been for many, many years. And I can tell you, it's an absolutely great neighborhood for Democrats. All right. Now, I don't really think, I'm not sure, but I don't really think that Tom thought for his whole entire life that he really yearned to be the secretary of the Story County Democrats. But he did know very, very early on that he wanted to be a journalist. And you're going to hear this repeated theme throughout. So from the time that he was very young, and he grew up in Tacoma, Washington, we're so glad that he decided to come this way. But as a young child, he knew he wanted to be a journalist. In fact, he proved that when at the age of 9, he began working with the family newspaper. And he moved up really very rapidly. At the age of 9, he edited his 6th grade school newspaper, and then he did his 9th grade, and then he did his high school newspaper, and you get the idea. He also decided that movies could be a lot of fun. And so, at the age of 16, he began working as the manager of a movie theater in his neighborhood in Tacoma, Washington. You know, you just get a lot of terrific experience growing up, and he just absorbed all of this. Well, later on, if we have enough time, you can talk with him about some of his favorite movies, because today he's still doing movie reviews on KHOI, and he did for many years write movie reviews for the Ames Tribune and on WOI radio. So he's been doing this a very long time. Skipping ahead, he graduated from the University of Washington in 1965. And I said, "Oh, that's a great year." He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's the year I graduated." So we celebrated that. Following that, he entered the United States Air Force and was first stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi. And you can imagine that going from Washington to Biloxi, Mississippi, provided a great many learning opportunities. This was followed by service in Vietnam. And he was with the Military Information Office in Vietnam, and again shares with so many of our Democrats the experiences of being a veteran and of understanding that whatever we hear today, we know that there are veterans right here in this room and in this state and in this nation who are being served well. And the Veterans Administration deserves our support. From there, he returned to school at the University of Wisconsin. And finally, he came to Iowa State. He taught in the Greenlee School of Journalism and Communication and achieved his emeritus status after 38 years teaching at Iowa State University. And he retired in 2015. And many of you know what I mean by putting retired in quotations. He still to this day is writing, enjoys being at KHOI and providing movies and soundtrack shows on Sunday on Masterpieces and Classical. He also is continuing to teach through OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And if any of you are interested, I think there are still a few openings in the upcoming class that begins March 26th. That's a Tuesday from 1 to 2:30, and it's going to be about women in film and has all kinds of interesting things to share with us with that. I wanted to take a little moment just to share what I thought was a very special remembrance that he shared with me. You know, in journalism, as in law, as in medicine, and a number of things, it can be sometimes difficult to take an active part in political parties. One has to be a little careful about that. So Tom was sharing about someone that I think many of you know by the name of Bill Coonerth. Bill was also in journalism at Iowa State. He could tell some fabulous stories, and he was a wonderful recruiter. So he would go up and down the halls encouraging people to come to this, go to that, come along with me. And the first thing he did, don't tell anybody. He got Tom to go with him to a Republican meeting. Tom thought perhaps that wasn't quite the place for him. But on down the road a little bit, Bill pursued and said, come on, I'm going to go to this Democrat gathering. I just think you should come along. And, you know, you might find something you want to do. I mean, you'll just have fun with people. We might stuff a few envelopes. I mean, you know, what can go wrong with stuffing envelopes? So he goes to this gathering, and before you know it, Tom is elected precinct chair in 1978. And he has given wholeheartedly to the Democratic Party ever since. And I think there's something in there for all of us. First of all, this party, to me, does and has always felt like a neighbor. It's like family. We enjoy one another. And I think that's very important. And secondly, never be timid about inviting others to go with you. Come along, meet some great people, have some good discussions. So what if you have a little disagreement every now and then? You'll have a great time, and you can always be safe stuffing envelopes. 3 cheers for Professor Tom.
Thank you very much, Jane. All right, my next honor is to introduce Louis Rosser, who's done so much, and he's going to step forward and tell us a little bit about Tom Corrieri. Thank you, Louis. And give him a round of applause. What the heck? He earned it. There you go.
Thank you very much, Doctor. When I got the call from Marcia, and first of all, again, thanks, Marcia. Marcia, this is incredible. She threw all of this together. About a little over a month ago, you know, she knew that the rest of us would be getting ready for the caucus today and all the craziness. She goes, I know, but it's best to have it on the same day. So I'll take care of it. I'll do all the organizing, and she did. So she called me up and a couple of weeks ago and said, Louis, I need, can you say a couple nice words about Tom Corrieri? And I said, oh, it'd be my honor. When I first got here and got real active in the party, Tom was very, very supportive in reaching out and saying, not being shy about giving me his advice. And that's something that he's been great at. For those of you that aren't aware, Tom has served as the treasurer for 12 years and done a whole lot more than just being a bookkeeper, or a whole lot more than just filling out the ethics reports and keeping track of and filing those in a timely manner and keeping the Story County Dems, out of trouble with them. He's been so much more and meant so much more to the county organization. In addition to doing that, and we're not talking about just a couple bucks here or there, as we can be very, very proud of. But over the course of a year, as every election cycle, we're talking about $32,000 that he's got to keep track of and report on. And if you can imagine, there's a few Democrats that do concern themselves with how that money is being spent. So every month he's got to have his report ready and be able to answer those questions. And he's always dedicated to making sure that he's being transparent about all of that. And also planning to and giving wise advice to the Central Committee and the Executive Committee and how those dollars should be spent. So it's really, really been a pleasure working with him for these years. But let's talk about the other things besides that. He spent countless hours in campaign office and really kind of becoming like the campaign office dad for all the various staffers over the years. You know, you can always count on Tom to be there to open up and, stay late, do something, be in charge of, especially like helping out with the heavy duty lift of taking leadership roles with get out the vote efforts. All of that, making sure that we find a decent office that isn't too hot or too cold, and the lights stay on, and the Wi-Fi works, and that's who has been taking care of all of those things. It really, and a lot of people just think it happens, but you know what? It doesn't just happen. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Just finding a campaign office, because not too many landlords are sitting around, saying, "Oh yeah, we want somebody to rent it just for 6 months." So every 2 years, got to get back out there, and Tom's led the way in helping find good space for our local campaign offices. So it's a lot of behind the scenes, but he's just made it smooth and made it happen. Now outside the party, he's also done some great things for the residents of Story County. There was a commission a few years back that gave some advice or made some suggestions on how to improve and bring some transparency to county government and make some changes. He served on that task force, and there were some great ideas in it. Now, they weren't all adopted to Tom's disappointment, but some, it brought some attention to some of the issues that should be addressed in county government going forward. And now that we have a Democratic control back of the county board, some of those things might actually come to fruition in the future. So that's something to look forward to, and I think some legacy that Tom will be adding to that. So again, the other thing that Tom is dedicated to, in addition to the treasurers, is his great political skills of advising the various candidates over the years of, especially those that are taking first steps and running for local office, and and very, very keen things that, most of it he's learned in New York. That's okay. But it's very, very wise counsel. I know just recently, Ted Rasmussen has been very very appreciative of that. But a lot of others, Linda, others, Loris, others. Tom was always there to offer and take it or leave it. And he's honest about that, but he's going to tell you like it is, and what his perspective is. And it's always been very, very, very helpful. So, Tom, thank you for your service. It's been an honor working with you over the past several years, and we're not going to let you run off. I love the emphasis, with Troy kept mentioning the emeritus term. We will definitely keep you involved. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
So I'm not Selden Spencer. This is what happens when you have a physician who is your MC and he's on call. I have his notes. I'm just going to let you. This is actually what it says in his notes. It says, quick bio of each candidate. Height, weight, history of communicative diseases. Those are crossed off, so. And I am being honest. I'm reading this directly from his notes. So the next person up is Lucy Martin to talk about John Klaus.
Thank you, Beth. So I'm going to start with a quick disclaimer because I had lunch with Carolyn Klaus the other day, and I thought I knew a lot about John Klaus, but I wanted to make sure that I was straight on my facts. So anything that I get incorrect is Carolyn's fault. It's not my bad handwriting or anything. So Gets to be number one again. When I was talking to Carolyn, I was trying to figure out when I met John, and I couldn't remember a time when I wasn't asking him for advice or talking to him or listening to his very soothing and professorial voice at a Democratic meeting. But I joined the party working on Beth's campaign in 2004. I probably met the Klauses. And I can't really talk about John without talking about Carolyn. So I'm going to throw you in there a bit too. But he's somebody that's always been there, as far as I can tell, for somebody like me who came to Ames in the early aughts and got involved and found a community here that I could support and could support me and share my values. So I'm expecting I still get to go over to their house, because if you ever worked on any campaign or anything for Story County Dems, you end up talking to John Klaus. You might go over there for a bit of advice, and you'll leave with probably a hot meal in your stomach after having a glass of wine, maybe some rhubarb from the garden, some advice about where to buy some good furniture next time you're in the market. So it's really the full bore experience there, and nobody's giving that up. I did ask Carolyn, because I didn't know the story, how she and John met, and she said, well, we met at a bar in Des Moines, and John was there with a friend. I think Carolyn was there with a friend, and the guys had some room at their table, so they said, why don't you come to sit at our table? And the next day, he spent all day tracking her down and called her up because she had mentioned where she worked, and asked her out on a date. Yeah, it was cute. It was cute back then, but I was probably stalking now. But I think that's a great illustration of John. You know, he was very kind. He saw people that needed some place to sit down and offered that to them. But then he was also very meticulous and detailed and tracked down what he needed and got what he wanted at the end of the next night. So, you know, I think sometimes your personality is set early on. Makes sense to me. So even though I wasn't there at the time, I'm like, that's a perfect John Klaus story right there. And I'm sure many people have better stories than I do. Just a little bit of background on John. He's from Carroll, and Carolyn is from Fairfield, or rural Fairfield. So a good Iowan from the get-go. He graduated from the University of Iowa and the law school, and Carolyn told me this. He got notice that he passed the bar, and he also got his draft notice in the same mailbox on the same day. But like many of people of a certain age in the Story County Dems, he served in Vietnam. He was in the Signal Corps. And then after moving back to central Iowa, and he and Carolyn moved up to Ames in 1972, and he became the Ames attorney at the ripe old age of 29. So he's been serving this community for decades. We were lucky at Story County Dems, once he retired, that he devoted a great deal of his time to the Story County Dems, but that's not the only thing. He was on the board for the Center for Creative Justice, the board for Heartland Senior Services. If you've ever gotten a ride to an event from John, you probably had to move boxes for Food at First to the back of the van so you could fit in there. If you go to their house, they're often hosting far-flung relatives or foreign students or somebody just down on their luck. So really a family that gives with both hands and full hearts. As a member of the League of Women Voters, I've also been very fortunate to work with John. He's done a lot with their Observer Corps. Somebody said, who goes to the Board of Supervisors meetings? Well, John Klaus is one of them. I'm always very grateful when people attend public meetings, and nothing against Loris and Linda, but I only go to those meetings if I have to. So, which is about every other week, so it's part of the job. But I've been really grateful for his efforts with voter registration, with the league, and also his work as a precinct election official. John has chaired Ames 2-5 for many years. If you don't know about Ames 2-5, it is our busiest precinct in Ames, and usually in one of the busiest precincts in the county, and processes probably 2,000 voters on election day. So somebody that not only does that, but does that like every 2 years without complaining, that's a great person. But I do want to wish John great luck on his retirement from his retirement now. So he's going to continue volunteer work, but he's also going to be catching up on his back issues at the New Yorker, enjoying his family. He has beautiful family, beautiful grandchildren. He's going to get a new grandchild here in May. So to add to the beauty that's already exists, he's been doing some traveling. They did go to Iceland this year and just got back from Miami. So I think, we just hope to see you at your events. I expect you will be there. If you ever ask him, he'll show up with both food and ask what kind of beer you want as well. So thank you for everything you've done, John, and thanks for being a great supporter of Dems and a great friend to Ames and a great friend to me.
So I'm really enjoying hearing all these biographies, things I didn't know about all these people that Carol and Fairfield. I had no idea, and I don't know why. But as a candidate, I know Lisa and Herman and I tell our stories over and over and over again. I'm sick of hearing my own sometimes, but it's so neat to be refreshed and hear some new ones. Up next is Herman Quirmbach to talk about Jan Bauer.
Well, thank you, Beth. I heard the word that Troy was using with regard to some of our retiring officers, and it reminds me of when I first met Lee. She had, of course, the broad vocabulary that you would expect of a college professor, but she's already blushing. She knows where I'm going. A lot of the words that she knew, she had learned by reading them, had not heard them pronounced. And the one that was brought to mind tonight, she pronounced emeritus. Sounds like a disease, right? In fact, I've concluded that it is a disease that often afflicts college professors as they get older. Usually the onset is observed with the award of tenure. So all of our officers, emeritus, we wish you many years of productivity and are grateful for your service. Where do I start with Jan Bauer? Well, you've all known her for decades, so I don't know how much there is that I can tell you that you don't already know. I start with her in January of 1992. I got my baptism in Iowa politics in the snows of New Hampshire. We were out, as we often were back in those days, visiting Lee's parents on Cape Cod over New Year's. And the day after New Year's, I put her on a plane at Logan to go off to an academic conference, and I headed for New Hampshire to work on Tom Harkin's presidential campaign. Well, I drove up to Concord, where the office was, and a day or two later, drove down to the largest city, Manchester, to meet a bus of crazy folks from Iowa who had trucked all the way on out there to work on Tom's campaign. And I think some of you may have been on that bus, but the ones I especially remember were Jan and Kurt and Melinda. They tumbled on down out of that bus and tumbled right into my heart. You heard this morning, if you were at the gathering, I was playing chauffeur, using my taxi driving skills. Yes, I once was a Boston cab driver. I'm a little more moderate these days in my habits, but on the other hand, I'm a handy guy. I'm still a handy guy to know if you're late for a flight. So I drove them. I drove them from Manchester up to Concord, and then way out in the country, in the countryside of Concord, to a Harkin volunteer who had agreed to put some of these folks up. And over the next few days, I got to know them rather well. I had come down with a cold, so while Kurt was out knocking on doors, I was sitting inside at the headquarters, and Jan and Melinda were teaching me the finer points of envelope stuffing. And we got to know each other quite well. Melinda was pitching in and keeping us fed. The concoction, I mentioned this summer, and I'm going to mention it again because it was good. We were not catered by any of the fancy restaurants. I don't know if New Hampshire has any fancy restaurants, but we had bologna, and we had ham, and we had sandwich bread. And Melinda got her hold of I think a blender or a meat grinder, and took the bologna and took the ham and ground it all up, and it became blam, which actually was quite good. That was actually quite good. We had a good time. We got to know each other real well. And by the time I got back to Iowa, I'd stayed around a bit longer than they did, and of course I was driving myself back, so I couldn't drive all the way on through. But by the time we got back, they had recruited me to fill Jan McCarley's spot on the Central Committee, and I've been working with Jan and the whole Bauer family ever since. Later that same year, Jan got herself elected a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in New York City. And so that's a big deal. And of course, you know, New York City is not known for cheap hotels, or at least not cheap hotels you'd want to stay in. The convention hotels were rather expensive. And so I called up an old friend of mine, Donna, and she agreed to put them up at her apartment. Well, it turned out that apartment was air conditioned, and somehow or another the hotel air conditioning wasn't working. So I don't know how many of the Harkin delegations stayed at Donna's apartment, but I don't know that I've seen Donna since. No, they had a good time, and the family was actually seen on national TV. Participating in the convention, and of course Tom had ended his campaign quite a bit earlier, but he got on board right away with the Clinton campaign, and as did everybody else, and we pulled it off. We reversed 12 years of Republican misrule and elected a Democrat to the White House who was reelected and did a lot of good things. Well, Jan moved on, of course. In 1997, she was selected as Story County Democratic Chair. 1997. There's several people, I don't see them crawling around here, but several of the people who've been here tonight weren't even alive back then. I don't know where did the grandkids go? Oh, they're back over there. All right. Well, it's been a long ride. 22 years. 22 years leading this. Jan, geez, how have you done it? Leading this collection of people. my goodness. But we have been together through thick and thin. A couple of terms of W were pretty thin. But we have held together and elected a lot of good Democrats to a lot of different offices. Jan herself then, as Troy noted, was selected for the Democratic National Committee in 2009. So 22 years leading our county party and 10 years helping to lead our national party. That's quite an impressive record. I can't think of anybody who has given more to this county party and who has had more involvement at the national level. We're just real proud to have somebody from Story County who has assumed that kind of a role. I remember a few years ago, and I'm trying to think of the name and it's not coming to me, but we had someone down at in the state government. I think he had been nominated for Director of Public Health, Department of Public Health. It turned out it was a fellow who had taught at Ziering once upon a time. And so we got talking about that a little bit. The Senate has to confirm these folks. Well, he not only remembered Jan Bauer, he says the smartest person who'd ever graduated from the Ziering schools. And I'm sure that Lee was not too far behind. You think of this family here, all right? The first emergency management coordinator for Story County, Air Force Academy graduate, Colonel Lee Bauer, Democratic National Committee 10 years, and of course the real star here is Melinda, who kept them all fed and kept them in order, which is no small order. Bake lots of cookies. That's the key. That's the key. So I want to thank Jan. I want to thank her whole family. I want to thank you for your service, for your loyalty, especially personally for your friendship. You have been a joy to know and to work with, and I trust that that's going to continue for many years. So Jan, thank you.
So we have a few awards to present at this time. Sure. This one says from Iowa House of Representatives, Certificate of Recognition to Tom Corrieri. Having been brought to the attention of the Iowa House of Representatives that Tom Corrieri deserves recognition for his dedication and years of services to the Story County Democrats. Now and therefore, in consideration of the foregoing, the undersigned does hereby extend congratulations and gratitude on this 9th day of March 2019. Congratulations, Tom Corrieri.
And similarly, from the Iowa Senate, it reads, at the request of the Senator from Story County, that'd be me, the Senate hereby recognizes and honors Tom Corrieri for his many years of exemplary service to the Story County Democratic Party and to the voters and community members of Story County, signed by Senate Minority Leader Janet Peterson, myself, and a couple of Republicans.
So ours are worded the same as Tom was. So the next certificate of recognition goes to John Klaus. Thomas Beell.
There you go. This is the second time I've helped retire Tom Beell.
Last but not least, to Jan Bauer. had the little changeover of MCs. Did we have more on that? We're heading now to the future of oh, okay. I'm sorry. Herman Quirmbach talking about the past. New MC.
Well, I hope I have a little bit of a role in the future as well, but I was tasked to dig up some facts, which I'm very happy to say a bunch of people helped me with. Here's one trivia question for you. Who was county party treasurer before Tom Corrieri? No. Charlie Sage. Charlie Sage. And here's the really, really, really obscure trivia question. Who was the county party treasurer before Charlie Sage?
What's his name?
Yeah. Harry Burley?
Hammer?
Yeah, what's his name? It was that long ago. We have had two people to serve as county party treasurers for more than a decade each. And that kind of stability and that kind of continuity is really important. You do need to file those campaign finance reports, as Sue Ravenscroft did once for me, and Mary Lundy does for me now. And it does take a fair amount of work to get that done and to get it right, and to provide the records that then are a basis for ongoing fundraising. Just to give you an idea, and Tom was able to, Corrieri was able to dig these figures out for me. Over the last 16 years, the county party has raised over $510,000. I think we need to get a little applause for that. That average is just under $32,000 a year. In 2018, the party spent for advertising, get out the vote, candidate donations, headquarter expense, about $51,000. I know we all think that there's too much money involved in politics, and I wish it were less, but there are some things that have to be paid for. Computer access, putting ads on the internet or newspapers, campaign brochures. I pay for my own walking shoes, but everything else, comes with a price tag to it. The soup supper that was held last month, $16,071. $16,000 and 375 people in attendance. That's always a fabulously well-attended event. I have never seen the place so jammed. I was praying in the corner that the fire marshal would not show up, because we would have been busted. Yeah, the statute of limitations hasn't run yet, has it? We have about 350 donors on our donor list. For one county party to have that many people who donate, some more regularly than others, but we of course need to expand that, as we always do, but that's a pretty good mark. Well, the money is a means to an end. The end is winning elections, and you do that by identifying voters, registering them, getting them out to vote, whether by absentee or at the polls. Jim Popkin ran some numbers for me on that score. In the year 2002, the Republicans had a registration advantage in Story County over the Democrats of about 1,400 voters. They were 1,400 ahead in registration in 2002. In 2018, the Democrats have the advantage over the Republicans by 3,700. That's a swing of about 5,000. That's going to win elections for you. All right? In 2000, this is one of the things I learned on the Harkin campaign, because he always emphasized this. You know, absentee votes that have been turned in on time and postmarked on time, that's a whole other problem. I mean, that's money in the bank. That's people you don't have to go crazy trying to find on election day. In the year 2000, so from the year 2000 on, the Republicans have never had more absentee ballots than the Democrats had. In 2018, Democrats outperformed Republicans in casting absentee ballots by over 3,500. Troy, take that number to any other county and let them know what standard they need to live up to. 3,500 more absentee votes. Now, of course, we're first in the nation for the presidential caucuses. And that's a big responsibility. And I know what some of the national people say. Well, Iowa's not very diverse. And Iowa's not very urban. And Iowa's not very a lot of damn things. Well, excuse me, who the heck launched Barack Obama? Okay? And all of you and all of everybody else, and I'll say on the Republican side too, we Iowans, we take our responsibilities seriously. We don't endorse any candidate unless you've met him at least 3 times, right? And we have had opportunities to meet a lot of candidates. Jan dug around in her files. Here are some of the people who have been through in the various cycles. In 1996, both Bill and Hillary Clinton. Well, and of course, Tom Harkin. 2000, Al Gore, Bill Bradley, and anybody remember Joe Lieberman? He was here. 2004, Howard Dean was here multiple times. I remember because he did a fundraiser for me. John Edwards was here. Dick Gebhardt was here. John Kerry was here multiple times. So was Dennis Kucinich. Carol Mosley Brown? Did she actually run? Okay. All right. And Joe Lieberman again. In 2008, Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden also did a fundraiser for me. Thank you very much, Joe. Please come back. Tom Daschle, Chris Dodd, John Edwards here multiple times. Dennis Kucinich multiple times. A fellow with a funny name, Obama, I think it was. Bill Richardson. All right. 2012, well, okay, it was just Obama, but there wasn't a whole lot of contest that time, thank goodness. 2016, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Martin O'Malley, Bernie Sanders, Madeleine Albright all visited us. 2018, Eric Swalwell, Jason Cantor, Steve Bullock, Tulsi Gabbard, Tim Ryan, John Delaney. Some of you may not know who some of those folks are, but they've all been here. There are more. Oh, yeah. Well, we're turning the... You know, I sent out an email to some of my friends around the country back in January. I said, you know, in the rest of the country, the calendar turned 2019, and Iowa turned 2020. We've had Elizabeth Warren. We've had Kirsten Gillibrand, Andy Yang, John Hickenlooper, Julian Castro, Kamala Harris, Jay Inslee, Pete Buttigieg. I got to work on his name. Buttigieg. Okay. All right. Yeah, we don't have nearly enough. And we will have a lot more whose names we're going to have to work on as well.
Booker.
And Cory, well, of course, Cory Booker at the gala last fall and here. So So we've had a lot of people, and we will have a lot more. They know to come to Story County. They know they're going to get a fair hearing. They know that they'll have a good, strong, enthusiastic audience turning out. They know, or they ought to know, they're going to also get some tough questions, as they should. But this is the kind of success that we have built with this Story County party, with all of the officers, the work of all of the officers, with Jan and John and Tom, and all of you folks. This is a team sport. Politics is a team sport, and we have one hell of a team, and we are here tonight to honor some hell of a fine leaders. So with that, I'll yield to my House colleagues who will talk about the future.
So I want to say that I go back further than Herman in Story County politics. I remember in 1972 stuffing envelopes for Margot McNabb in Story County. So I've been here a long time, but he's still older than me. I want to make that perfectly clear. So anyway, we are going to be introducing our new executive committee, but first of all, we want to talk a little bit about the future and what our expectations are. I don't want you to feel a little overwhelmed, so let me see. I got thrown off a little bit here. We want to win all the county elections, okay? So that's not a huge thing because we just need one more supervisor and I think the recorder, am I wrong? And we got all the county. Well, there you go. Simple. You got it done. Okay, thank you. We currently have 2 out of 4 legislative or House seats. We'd like all 4. Okay? Anybody? All right, there you go. So that means beating or winning over Dio and Bacon. We want to do our part to defeat Steve King, Joni Ernst, and Donald Trump. That means we got to get all of Ames out, but we got to make sure that rural Story County and the smaller towns absolutely get out. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. She's going to talk a little bit about her expectations.
Thanks, Beth, and enjoy being here tonight with everybody. So, yes, we want to make sure that we have the Democrat majority in both the House and the Senate. We've definitely moved up to 46 in the House, but 46 does not set the agenda. And we need to put more funding into education. We need to make sure that we are keeping our justice system nonpartisan. We need to make sure that we have the leadership to be able to protect our most vulnerable in Iowa and see that providers are getting paid and that they're not filing for bankruptcy as some are doing now. You know, I remember I'm a transplant to Iowa. Moved here back in 1984. And it has become my home. But I remember that Iowa was either number 1 or number 2 in the nation in education. You know, not just wrestling or basketball, but education. And we have taken that slow decline. And under the Republican leadership, we've continued to decline even further to where they're now implementing a voucher system or moving that direction. We need a Democrat majority to stop the direction that the Republicans are going and make Iowa education's number 1 again. We also need to look at implementing sensible gun laws in our state. And we are certainly not going to do that with the Republican majority and some of them down there who certainly want to just get rid of any type of regulation altogether. So there's a lot at stake and a lot at risk. We still need everybody's help. There is a bright future out there. I know there's enthusiasm and people they see where they want to go. We just need to keep the engine going and continue through that finish line. We can do it and we can do it collectively. Thank you.
So I am going to introduce the new executive committee, and if you would just come on up so that everybody will know who is leading us. I'm going to start, I'm just going to read your names off. First of all, I was sitting right behind Maddie, and I noticed that your husband, I'm assuming, Mr. Maddie. Love that name tag. Thank you very much for doing that. All right, so Maddie Anderson, Dustin Mason, Carter Griffin, and Amanda Rasmussen, if you'd come up. And if you don't feel too overwhelmed now. Did we go on too long and we lost Amanda?
Amanda had 2 5-year-old birthday parties
Okay.
after the conference.
All right.
She's a little tired.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you guys aren't too overwhelmed, and you saw what our expectations have been, and we know that you're up to it. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Okay, we are wrapping up. Thank everybody. And I don't have any notes, any more notes than what I got from Selden. Marsha Thompson, absolutely. So Marsha, thank you so much for organizing this. This is great. And Marlene Larson. Okay, the flowers are going to Jan and Maddie. I have a gavel here, and this means something to me because I've been here for so long. But it says Story County Democrats, Cliff and Marlene Larson, 1959 to 1977. So here is your gavel. Like anybody who has had anything to do with this party to stand up so we can give you some applause to say thank you so much for bringing food, for bringing wine, for participating in any way. We thank you so much. If I had a list, I'd name off all your names. Sherry, thank you so much. Thank you again, Marsha. Have a great evening.